November 14th, 2004. Wing Commander Captain David Fravor, Navy Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich, their backseat technicians, and multiple technicians on the USS Nimitz are running training drills off the coast of San Diego. They're alerted to a radio message from Central Command on the USS Nimitz fighter carrier that they have a real-world vector that they need to respond to. What happens over the next few minutes is the best evidence that I believe we currently have for the UAP phenomena to date. Welcome to ParaNormality, where today we will be discussing the very famous USS Nimitz Tic Tac encounter. Hello and welcome to ParaNormality. My name is Harry, and joining me today to talk about the weird and the wonderful is the weird and wonderful James. How are you doing, James?
I'm good. How are you doing, mate?
I am excited. This is a podcast that I have wanted to do personally for about 4 years. I'm fresh off the back of a lovely bit of burnout with another project that we previously did.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to jump into something very different, but that I'm extremely passionate about. And I'm thrilled that you could be on this journey with me, James.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the ride, man.
So you've not really heard much of this case other than really the intro that I sent you earlier in the week, have you?
Yeah, as I was listening along, that's kind of the first I've heard of it, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to take maybe like 30 seconds just to talk about sort of our experiences with the paranormal. So I'm not a believer in ghosts. It's something I never have believed in. I am truly a believer in sort of seeing is believing. But I have had 2 UFO encounters. I'm sure we'll talk about them on a upcoming episode. But that's sort of my history with the paranormal. Not a great believer in ghosts, although things like cryptids, myths and legends, that sort of stuff really piques my curiosity. UFOs are certainly my jam. What about you, James?
I think we are too small and too insignificant for there not to be like anything out there regarding UFOs and aliens. I think the universe is way too big for there not to be. Regarding ghosts and stuff, I generally do think that's sort of old mythical tales told by the sort of strange people than anything.
Well,
you know, like there's my parrot's possessed. No, I think that thing's just talking, son.
Yeah, it's just told you to f*** off.
But I'm excited to sort of be proven wrong and really sort of go as deep as we can into this and have our minds blown. I think I've had no personal experience with like UFOs or sort of ghosts or anything like that, but I'm completely open-minded to it. And like I said, I'm enjoying to go on the journey.
That's exactly what we want to hear. So yeah, we very much are going to delve into things like ghosts and cryptids. I've already got next week's episode sort of planned out, and it's UFO related, but there's a little twist to it I'm quite excited for. But let's jump on in to the USS Nimitz encounter. I'm not going to start with the actual encounter itself. We're actually going to go a few days before the visual sighting of the object. And although I have said a few names already, David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, they aren't the names that we're going to start with. For me, the pilots that saw the object aren't the most important people in this story, although they are trained observers. And that is a phrase that I will be using quite a lot throughout this podcast, is the term trained observer. So the person that I'm going to start with is actually Operations Specialist Senior Chief Kevin Day. Now, that is a bit of a mouthful. Kevin's job was basically to keep the skies safe for the pilots while they're on their training missions. So he would do all of that using the USS Nimitz radar system, which is a radar system that goes from sea level up to 80,000 feet. It covers hundreds of miles, and it was at that time one of the most sort of up-to-date and impressive systems that you possibly could find on a fighter carrier. The Nimitz was like the jewel of the US Navy at that time.
Okay.
So on November 10th, so this is 4 days before the intercept with the object, Kevin Day started noticing quite strange readings coming from a nearby island. Now, this is where things get weird. In his own words, the reason, this is his exact phrasing, the reason I say they're weird is because they started appearing in groups of 5 to 10 at a time, and they were pretty closely spaced to each other. They were at 28,000 feet only going 100 knots tracking south. So do you know anything about sort of like flight or how an object stays in the air?
No. I say I listened to that podcast you told me to listen to, but I still didn't understand it. But please inform me.
So the way that a wing works is it has something called a delta. So the air pressure on the top side and the bottom side, there is a negative pressure that lifts the plane up. In order to get that pressure, a plane has to go fast. So that is why on a big Boeing 747, they have a cruising speed of something like 500 to 600 miles an hour, because that is the speed that it takes that delta wing to push the air underneath the wing to keep it afloat.
Right.
So something at 28,000 feet shouldn't be able to travel 100 knots. Like that, That's very slow. I think roughly it's about 80 miles an hour. That really isn't a fast speed.
No, it's like cruising car speed, isn't it?
Yeah, that is like just breaking the speed limit in the UK on the motorway. Yeah. Like that's not a fast speed. So for an object to be going that slowly but that high, also there's no air really up at 28,000 feet.
No.
That is something that started to sort of have a few alarm bells started ringing. There was actually a sister ship on this training mission called the Princeton, and the Princeton radar techs, they actually started to worry that the actual the systems weren't working. So radar technician petty officer 3rd class Gary Voorhees says that they were getting ghost tracks and clutter. So he was looking at his radar screen, that imagine it's the Hunt for the Red October and he's looking at the big circle and it's going around.
Yeah.
He's looking at that and he can see lots of things that shouldn't be there. And Voorhees at the time was the only trained technician on the Princeton who actually had training with the CEC, so the Cooperative Engagement Capability System, and the Aegis combat system. So they're two very technical systems, and only one person on board knew how to run them.
Yeah.
And so hearing that these radar components weren't working properly, it was a really big concern for Voorhees. He's thinking that he's going to have to completely strip down these radar systems. And also, I think the Princeton had something called an AN Spy 1B passive radar system. And that, again, was the 80,000 to sea level radar system that they used. Yeah. And he genuinely thought that was malfunctioning. So he said all of the air system controls were disabled, recalibrated, and the hope is that the malfunctions would stop. And can you imagine what happened, James, once they recalibrated everything?
Everything was fine, and it's the end of the podcast, yeah?
Yes, thank you for tuning into episode 1.
No, I'm guessing the blitz was still fucking there.
Yeah, so once they finished the recalibration, Voorhees said that the tracks were actually sharper and clearer. So they didn't vanish. All they could actually see was more of the object in far more detail. Sometimes they would be, this blows my mind. So their operating system went from 80,000 to sea level. So sometimes objects would appear at 80,000 feet. So for me, that means they're coming from above 80,000 feet. So that's edge of the atmosphere.
That's right, yeah, curvature of the earth and all that, yeah.
Yeah, that's high. That's very high. I think 32,000 feet is 26 miles. So we're looking at something like close to 100 miles up in the air.
Is the cruising speed for a basic airline's like 40,000 feet, so it's double that?
I think so, yeah. I'll tell you what, I'm going to be the laziest person in the world and just 80,000 feet to miles. Oh no, that's really lame. It's only 15 miles, but there we go. It's still very high. Still very high. 15 miles up. What am I thinking? The space station's at 120 miles up.
They didn't see anything, no?
No, they didn't. No, they weren't on call that day. But sometimes these things would appear at an altitude of 80,000 feet. And in Voorhees' exact words, they would be going 80,000 to 60,000 feet. Other times they would be at 30,000 feet going like 100 knots. Their radar cross-sections didn't match any known aircraft. There were 100% red, no squawk, no IFF. IFF means identification friend or foe. So they would squawk to them and they would send them messages.
Yeah.
Who is this? Who are you? And nothing would be returned. There was another instance, this one again blows my mind. Another instance, Kevin Day noted that these objects were dropping from the upper limits of the radar readings at 80,000 feet down to sea level in 2 seconds and would stay motionless on the radar once they had. So these things are traveling 10 miles a second. So that is Fast.
It's not behaving like, say, an Earth aircraft. It's not slowly because that's quicker than crashing.
Yeah,
So
that is very fast.
yeah,
The fastest, so the fastest known sort of. We'll talk a little bit about the speeds later, but the
yeah,
fastest known man-made craft that we have, I think, is something like Mach 5 or Mach 6. I think it goes, and that in miles per hour is like 3,000 miles per hour. So that's still very fast, but these
yeah.
things are traveling like 15 miles a second.
Second.
Like that is obscene. And not only are they moving that fast, they're then stopping. Anything inside there would be going from 10 miles a second to 0. Like
Yeah,
that is unsurvivable. We will talk about the 5 observables a little bit later. That is a term that I sort of want to go into, and that is about sort of how to detect UFOs. It's something that has come up to identify UFO crafts and stuff like that. But these objects were traveling at instantaneous speeds, is basically one of the 5 observables.
yeah,
But then you're a radar tech, you can't see these objects. So you must think, well, it's just a glitch in the system. You're not
yeah.
just
Blip
going to
on the
go
radar.
straight.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're not going to go to UFOs, are you? But then this is what Kevin Day did. So Kevin Day would send those messages on to Voorhees, and he would back up the radar readings with visual tracking using high-powered binocular systems. So he would be given the bearing, the range. He would be told the direction, the bearing, the height, and the range, and he would physically go onto the deck of the Princeton, and he would look at these objects. Voorhees said that I'd get relative bearings and then run up to the bridge and look through a pair of heavily magnified binoculars in the direction the returns were coming from. I couldn't make out details, but they'd just be hovering there. Then all of a sudden, in an instant, they'd dart off all together in one direction and then stop again. At night, they would give off a phosphorescent glow, and they were slightly easier to see than in the day. So far, we're going to take a little breather. I want to hear your thoughts on what's happening so far. If you were on the Princeton or the Nimitz, what the hell is going on?
It's something completely unexplainable. I'm guessing, like you said, this guy is sort of the one who knows the system better than anyone, and he's confused. So
Yeah, and
to the point
he
where he's on
doesn't
the
just
front.
know this. He doesn't just know the system. He's recalibrated the system.
Sorry, yeah, to the point where, like you said, it's become clearer.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you're out there seeing stuff you've never seen before. Like,
yeah. It's not like you're seeing a light in the sky and
no,
it's like, oh, that's a bit weird. Like,
yeah, oh, that could be a frisbee. Yeah, no, this
yeah,
is like, yeah, it's not just a stationary object; it's moving at speeds you can't fathom.
and there's not one
And
of them either. There's
no,
multiple.
multiple of them, and they're all behaving the exact same way. So that shows a form of intelligence building that. It's
Yeah,
not like a freak thing you see in the sky. This is all behaving like a, lack of a better word, man-made
yeah.
object.
Like an object that is being moved, not
Yeah,
something that's just drifting in the wind, not a
no,
balloon, not a blimp,
no, it has.
something that has a
It's moving with
control face to it.
Yeah, it's moving with purpose.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's not
So
like, yeah,
that's not something that normally you would say people see. But they saw these things on the radar for days and days and days. And Kevin Day, there's some really great interviews with Kevin Day. He actually did a roundtable with the guys over at that UFO podcast, who I'm a huge fan of.
yeah.
And I talk to him quite a lot, and his show is amazing. And he's actually done roundtables with Voorhees and with Kevin Day.
Oh wow.
And he's spoken to them. And I want to go back to the phrase. They're trained observers. So they're someone whose job depends on them being able to see things properly. So
Yeah.
for me, my 2 UFO sightings, I'm not going to go into them, but I don't know what I'm looking for.
No, it's true.
I'm just some bloke. I looked up in the sky. I've seen some things I can't explain, but they may be explainable.
Mm.
These are trained technicians at the height of their career.
Yeah.
The US Navy has put lots of time and money into them being good at their job. And part of their job is they have to be able to identify objects. That's just part of their job.
Yeah.
And so when people, a lot of times these get written off, UFOs get written off as crazy people seeing lights in the sky, and you can't trust them. And unfortunately, this has happened with Kevin Day and Voorhees, where people have tried to write them off as making the story up or not seeing things or not knowing what they're looking at. that these are people that are specifically trained to use these systems and to observe. Trained observers. They're on the Nimitz fighter class aircraft carrier. That's like the crown jewel.
Let's say they're on the highest like graded ship, so they're obviously going to be bloody good at what they do.
They are the best of the best.
Yeah, I suppose they won't like force us to sign an NDA or anything, because a lot of this sort of stuff, I'm guessing, as more of this podcast goes on, we realise that a lot of shit is held under key, under safe and key, and I suppose they won't force.
We will talk about that a little bit later.
Okay,
because the way... No, I'm glad you brought it up, because it's something that I've needed to put in my notes. But before we move on to, I think, probably the sexiest part of this podcast, the chase. Before we talk about that, I wanted to just go over these things called the 5 observables. So there's a chap called Lou Elizondo. He was the...
great name.
It's an amazing name. And the collars that he wears, you should see him. He's a god of a man. He has collars the size of my shoulders. He's amazing. Lou Elizondo, if you believe what he says, was the former director of ATIP, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program. It was a $50 million a year black book operation set up by the US government to investigate UFOs and UAPs. And he was the director of that. There's a great interview with him I think it was on CNN, where he was openly talking about the fact that these objects, they're not man-made. Like, they're traveling thousands of miles an hour. And he was great. He's a brilliant man. Yeah. And he's also had a TV show called UFO, where they investigate a lot of this stuff. But he came up with this thing called the 5 observables. And if an object has these 5 observables, then they would classify it as a UAP. That's the UAP is the new name. It's not UFO. It's So I originally watched that Nope movie. Yeah. And he's on about, I don't know what it stands for, but it was on about the change from UFO to UAP. Yeah. So UAP is unidentified aerial phenomena. So they changed it from object to phenomena.
Because it might necessarily be an object.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Lou Elizondo has come up with the 5 observables. So the first one is anti-gravity lift, which these objects have got because they are just floating in the air doing nothing. The second one is sudden and instantaneous acceleration, which these things have because they can outrun pretty much anything that we know of, including our radar systems. Hypersonic velocities without signature. That's the important bit. Without signature. So there's no vapor trails. There's no sonic booms.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that what it means? Yeah.
So there's nothing to show. There's nothing to show that they are being powered, which sounds weird, but there's nothing to say that they are using conventional methods of propulsion.
Well, yeah, so what we consider conventional, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Low observability or cloaking. So sometimes they have like a haze or a glow around them, a phosphorescent glow at night, something like that. So already we are seeing 4 of the 5 observables. And here's my favorite one, transmedium travel. So that is where it can go from space to atmosphere, or it can go from the Earth's atmosphere down into the water. And that is where we will take this episode now.
So my mouth is agape right now. Sorry, the fact that you said it turns underwater. Yeah, let's go.
Yes. So before we go straight into the next part, because the chase is a very sexy name, I want to give you a few details onto David Fravor and why for me he's a key witness. David Fravor was the pilot who is famously known as the man who chased a UFO. If that's not the coolest title in the world,
isn't it?
I don't know what is.
Yeah, imagine putting that on a CV.
He's been interviewed by Rogan, and it's great. But the one that I would say to check out if you want more information on this guy is Lex Friedman. Did a 3.5-hour podcast with him, and it's incredible.
Yeah, I don't like Rogan, so Lex Friedman be the one.
Lex Friedman's great. So David Fravor wasn't just a pilot. David Fravor was, and here's how cool this guy is, he was the wing commander of the Black Aces, a squadron of US F-18 Super Hornet fighter planes, and he was a veteran of the Top Gun pilot school. So this guy is basically Tom Cruise without the homoerotic beach volleyball.
And the tooth that stays in the middle of his gums. You've seen that?
Yeah. I have, yeah.
That's more alien than what we're talking about, to be fair.
But this guy is legit. He's not like some crop duster out in Illinois who's in his biplane who sees a crop circle and a little green man running about.
Yeah. He's not Randy Quaid.
Yeah. This guy was tasked to defend California during the 9/11 attack.
Wow.
Yeah, when 9/11 happened, he was in the air. Like, that's the importance of this guy's statement. This isn't just some pilot.
No.
You know, Kevin Day and Voorhees can be sort of written off because, well, they don't fly planes. They don't know what they're looking for. They just sit on a boat and look at objects.
Yeah, sea badness.
This guy he's so cool. He's a wing commander of an F-18 Super Hornet squadron. Like, this guy is legit. He's seen multiple tours in combat. He defended America during the 9/11 attacks. He's what the US Navy would call quite good at his job. And again, he's a trained observer.
Oh, and he's a trained observer.
Yeah, it's part of his job. He has to know what he's looking at. If he's 30,000 feet in the air and he can see possibly an enemy plane on the horizon, he has to know what he's looking for.
Yeah.
He spends multiple hundreds of hours training, observing, looking for things in the sky, flying these planes. This guy is the most important person that really is flying a fighter plane at that time in America. So
he's the guy.
He is the guy. So he's quite a good witness to have when you want to talk about like chasing a UFO.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Alex Dietrich, who was in the other F-18, she's also been on multiple combat missions. She's also a commanding lieutenant. She has got literal degrees in physics. Like, she knows what she's talking about. And they were doing a training mission. It was about 100 miles off the coast of San Diego. So they're doing something basically like war games. So there's an enemy ship, there's an ally ship, and they're just flanking each other. They're just running drills. So they're not equipped with any missiles, because when you equip people with missiles on training missions, people die. Like, that's just what happens.
Yeah, makes sense.
So Fravor and Dietrich are on their combat training mission just off the coast of San Diego, and they're accompanied by their two backseaters. So they're their technicians that will be observing radar systems, that will be using the FLIR cameras, their forward-looking infrared sensors. These are the guys that are also just as important as the guy in the front seat, because they are the eyes behind the back of the head of the pilot. So they're on their routine mission. They're just blasting off on the coast of San Diego. Lovely, beautiful day, clear blue skies, no chop, no surf, nothing. Perfect weather for training. And they get a call from the Nimitz to say that they need to intercept a real-world vector. And they're asked, this is a weird bit, they are asked by the radio team, when they get the call through, if they have any active weapons.
Ooh.
Which, for me, sounds a bit weird, but David Fravor does say that in an interview, a lot of the times they ask that because it could be a drug-running plane and they might have to shoot someone down. Or, yeah. So there's often reasons, but they confirm that they're on training. They don't have any active weapons with payloads, but they'll go and intercept the radar marking. So that's not a problem at all. And so at this point, Fravor explains that he thinks that he's going to see some drug runners in a small aircraft, and he has no reason to expect anything other than that will happen. Now, Fravor and Dietrich both confirm in interviews together. Dietrich only came out a few years ago. This happened in 2004. David Fravor sort of came out about 5 years ago. Alex Dietrich waited a few years to see how it sort of played out. And they've come out and said that the weather was perfect. High visibility, low wind, no surf, clear skies, and it makes their observations even more compelling, because it's not like someone could write it off as glare or cloud cover. There's nothing.
Kite surfers.
Exactly, yeah. 300 miles off the coast of San Diego, just some random dude on a surfboard. But
yeah, me and my 5 friends.
There's nothing that can be put in the way of their observation. So they move towards the target and they hear the term merge plot on the radio. And that's basically where the two plots on the radar merge together, meaning that they are in the same sort of square mile area as the object. So the radar system only picks up one object now. So whatever they're doing, whatever's happening, they're not seeing on the radar. So they are very much alone now. that they don't have the help of the Nimitz. Even with their radar tech, it can't pick up everything. So they reach the site of the merge plot, and Fravor's looking around for checkpoint objects to see sort of where he is, get his bearing, and he hears his backseater say, "Do you see that?" And as he says that, Fravor notes that he's banking slightly to the right, and as he looks down, he sees a white cross in the ocean. It looks like a disturbance from under the water. He estimates it to be the size of a Boeing 747 and is completely out of place with the rest of the calm water. He initially thinks it could be rotor wash. So, when you see a helicopter get near the ocean and all the spray comes up. He initially thinks that it could be rotor wash, but he notes that they are hundreds of miles in the middle of the Pacific, and that is when he spots the Tic Tac. So how are you finding this so far?
The reason I'm so silent is because my mouth's still open.
Yeah.
That's that chilling phrase of, do you see that? Like you said, these are trained professionals. They've probably seen a million things that we can never dream of seeing.
Yeah.
And to hear the sentence, do you see that? Yeah, kind of chilling.
Mm-hmm. And then what does he see? He sees a Boeing 747 cross under the water. Under the water. Not above, not flying above. In the water, creating a disturbance. Very bizarre.
Yeah.
So you think this is quite compelling evidence so far?
So far, yeah.
So it's about to get even more compelling, James. I'm happy to say that the story does not end. The story does not end here. So Fravor says that he can see the white Tic Tac object darting around the water like a pond skater on top of the cross. So it's going left, right, up, down, left, right. It's not moving up in altitude, but it is moving very erratically in the shape of the X under the water, almost as if gravity doesn't concern it. It's not moving in a conventional way. It's not like a helicopter where it bows and it ebbs and it flows.
No.
It's not like a plane where it's going forward and banking. This thing is just... He explains it like put a ping pong ball in a cup and swish it around, and that's the movement that you would see.
Like frictionless.
Completely frictionless. And it's like it's being rattled about, but in a very pronounced way. He confirms with Dietrich in the second plane, 1,000 feet above him, if she sees the object. And she confirms that she sees both the cross under the water and the Tic Tac. Well, they said at the time the object, it's become known as the Tic Tac. But they confirm that they see the second, the cross in the water and the second object. What happens next for me is the most compelling evidence we have to date that these craft exist. Fravor says to Dietrich that he's going to intercept. So he's going to fly at this thing. He's not happy watching this thing from above. He wants to go down. In one of his interviews, he says, I'm a pilot. I want to know what this stuff is. This is the coolest thing he's ever seen. And he wants to go and see it. He doesn't care about the fact he doesn't know what it is.
No.
He just has to go and see this thing.
What a way to go.
Yeah, exactly. He's at 30,000 feet, and the object is at a 12 o'clock position to him. So imagine a clock. He's at 6 o'clock, and the object is at 12. And he starts banking around, moving to the sort of 9 o'clock position with this thing, him sort of banking down and looking at the object.
Yeah.
He calls to his backseater that they're going to investigate, and he turns the nose of the plane down with the object visible above his right shoulder. He circles down, and after a few thousand feet of decline, the object abruptly stops, and it turns instantaneously, mirroring the movements of Fravor's jet in reverse. So he's coming down like the clock face, dropping at about 1,000 feet, maybe every 30 seconds, and this object is now coming up, sort of like what's it called? A helter-skelter. That's what this thing is doing. It's coming up off the water in order to meet him. He circles down, and while this is happening, Dietrich is observing the entire event from above in her jet at 32,000 feet. Fravor makes the decision to cut the circle. So that's basically he's going to turn sharply to the right, and he's going to try and cut from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock without continuing around the circle.
Yeah.
So he cuts the circle and turns sharply to meet the object in the middle. As he goes to move again, the object mirrors him completely, fires in front of his cockpit within 50 feet, and vanishes behind him. It travels from sea level close to 20,000 feet in a matter of seconds. And when Fravor calls Dietrich to confirm where the object is, she tells him it's just vanished. It had crossed the horizon in 3 seconds. So I want to give you an idea of the speeds that we're talking about. I had to do some maths for this. 30,000 feet is where Dietrich is.
Yeah.
The horizon is 212 miles away. In order for an object to vanish instantaneously over the horizon, it would need to be traveling at a speed of 380,000 miles per hour, which is 500 times the speed of sound. The fastest jet ever produced can go 6.2 times the speed of sound. These are the speeds that we're talking about. Instantaneous speed with no form of signature. Nothing coming off of this thing. Literally, click of a finger,
gone.
Vanished, gone. At this point, you'd probably think that that is a lot of factual witness data and evidence, but it gets even more bizarre.
So yeah, it's not some drunk in a bar.
No, it's not just some dude who says an alien put a stick up my butt. Like this. Yeah. This is multiple people on multiple systems.
Multiple professionals.
All professional trained observers doing their job properly, witnessing something they can't explain. However, you know that I said the object vanished at like 380,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a guess where it turned up?
So they're in San Diego as it stands.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come up. Is it another side of the planet? Am I trying to guess
that?
No,
it turned up at the exact location that Fravor and Dietrich were traveling to do their training. The exact location, their cap point. It turned up where they were originally going. So their bearings and range were set to one place, and they had to divert off of that.
Yeah.
This object showed up where they were originally going. So it's like it knew that they were going to be there.
It's like it scanned the plane, and it's like got the information from it.
But not just that. For me, it's like it wanted to be seen. It was going where it knew other people would be. It was going to a location where it knew that other people may see this. So we've got a lot going on right now, yeah?
A cocky little alien.
Yeah. A proper little cocky alien.
A cocky little alien.
So would you say that so far that this is quite compelling?
Yeah, it's...
Have you got any notes? You said that you were taking some notes.
I'm taking just sort of like what does the important side of like what you told me. So names, professions, and sort of like phrases that are standard.
So
like
is there anything right now that really like reaches out to you that you think that's weird?
The cross under the water. I'm trying to get my bearing on what that. So that almost seems like a station point for them.
It's like they're already here.
Yeah. So it's under the War of the Worlds. So they're so that Tic Tac was almost like not refueling, but like stationary at the point.
It was like it may be passing information on.
Yeah, and it clocked the pilot.
Yeah,
imitated it, almost gathered information, almost, and then off to the point where they were going. So this is beyond sort of like intelligent thinking, isn't it? This is
this is a realm
taunting.
This is a realm that I don't think that we can ever fully understand. It's so off of what we would call normal.
It's so sci-fi.
If it wasn't the fact that we had like literal pilots and radar techs looking at this thing, this would be unbelievable. If you watch this in a film, nobody would believe that it could be real.
No.
And for me, that's why I love this case so much. It didn't take me a lot of work to do the research for this, because I'm in awe of this case. It's insane.
I think everything surrounding it, like you said, the fact that there's all these trained observers, it's these professionals, highest of their field, this further guy being like pretty much the best pilot on the planet at that point.
Yeah.
And it's all coming from hugely reliable sources.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, do you want to know something?
Yeah, always.
It gets even more compelling, James.
Ugh,
doesn't stop
handle it.
So they get back to the Nimitz, and everyone comes up to him saying, you're the dude that saw the UFO. Blah, blah, blah. And they're having a bit of a laugh and a joke with it. But some of the pilots take this really seriously. They are concerned that there is something that they can't understand. And that that brings me on to the video that I'm going to send you.
Interactive.
So they got back to the Nimitz. and they discuss the encounter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the video, and you can watch it while I'm just explaining this next bit. And there's also a picture that I'm going to send after. If you can hear the clicking, by the way, guys, that's just us sending and receiving useful information.
We're actually secretly talking in Morse code.
Yeah.
Who knows who's listening to this anymore, Harry?
I am sending a picture, and I'm sending.
I forgot that a lot of the sort of declassified UFO stuff was released, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and so that's where this sort of basically comes from. Annoyingly, I can't seem to send.
Can you imagine if those pilots had body cams?
I know, it would be insane.
Actually, you could get your iPhone out, mate. Just
Well, we'll come on to that on another episode, because there has been a few pictures taken in planes of objects. Some of them compelling, one of them quite funnily called the Batman balloon. So I've just sent you a video.
I wonder what's that about.
I've just sent you a video, and I've just sent you a picture.
Well, I'm watching the video now.
So one of the pilots who was discussing this with Fravor, he was again a trained observer, but he wasn't just a trained observer with his actual eyes. He was actually a trained observer with the FLIR. FLIR is what you're looking at. It's the forward-looking infrared camera. So what you're actually looking at in this video is the heat signature, and you see like he's cutting between different feeds every now and again. So he's cutting between television feed, which is just what you're seeing, and then when it goes grey to black, you're seeing the infrared screen. And so he's trying to sort of like track the object with different methods. Some successful, not quite successful. But here's the thing. So you see at the end that object moves out of the field. It just sort of like moves to the left, instantaneously escapes a high-powered infrared camera system. That thing is booking it. Now, David Fravor has talked about this on Joe Rogan. He doesn't know exactly how fast that's going, but he can confirm that it's really, really fast. Annoyingly, he doesn't have like a parallax system, like there isn't objects that are being looked at in order to like get the bearing and range. And I wanted, if you're just looking at the picture very quickly, there's a few things that I want to talk to you about, because what you will see is in the bottom right hand corner, 19,999. So that is the altitude that they are currently at. They're at 20,000 feet, and the object is sat there stationary at 20,000 feet doing nothing. So they went out there and they found this object. They went to where it is on the radar, and you are looking at a video of the exact object that David Fravor chased. Now, there's a few other things.
This is the Tic Tac.
Yes, this is the Tic Tac that you're looking at. I know it's blurry, it's not great, but it's 2004 infrared systems of an object miles away.
Well, I mean, blurry's still going to point out like the unfathomable speed and the behavior,
and the shape, as well. It very clearly shows the shape. Now, one of the things that Fravor notices,
Star Wars reference.
Now, one of the things that Fravor makes note of on here is that this object isn't able to be locked. You can't physically lock the object. He's having to box it himself, is what the phrase is. So that little box that you see around it, those two lines, the FLIR technician has physically have to put that over the object in order for the system to track it, because this is actively jamming their radar systems. That is an act of war. Jamming a radar is an act of war. So if this was a Chinese or a Russian or a North Korean plane jamming the radar, they would have license to fire. Like, that's how serious that is. And this thing is just actively jamming, but they don't know how. This object just exists in a sphere of its own where nothing can be picked up by it. And that leads me on to my thoughts on what is propelling this object. And personally, I think that it's using a gravity well. So I don't think that it's using forms of combustion. I think that it can manipulate the fabric of space in order to propel it forward, because then it isn't actually traveling fast. Everything else is, and it's stationary. And that would explain the instantaneous speeds. It would explain the erratic motions. It would explain why these things can't be tracked, because everything would bend around it. There would be sort of a a non-exclusion zone around this object where space doesn't exist.
Yes, but it's like, sorry, quick tangent. Why like the Flash in theory can't exist because he travels so fast that the universe would just implode around him. Like, so this is like distorting the physics around it to be able to achieve this sort of like level of speed or like, you know, disobey our laws of physics.
Yeah, this is something that from what we're seeing here in this video, if this was a plane, you would see the contrail come out. You would see the burners. You would see white hot. You see black cold. This isn't a heated object. There is no form of propulsion that is moving this object. It's astounding that this video exists and these witness statements exist and people still think that UFOs are little green men. Because my theory, and we're going to get into this very quickly on this show, I thought it might be a few episodes in, is these things are already here and they're not manned. They are, for me, I think they are biological in nature. I think that they exist under the ocean because USO, an unidentified submerged object, is also something that that is looked into quite seriously.
Yeah.
And this thing was communicating or was with something that was under the water. Now, annoyingly, there's no evidence to show that object under the water. It never appeared on any radar systems. But NASA and the US government have both had underwater radar training and black book projects over the last few years, and they have classified everything that they found. So for me, these things exist here already, and they're not little metal crafts with green people that come from Zeta Reticuli. They are biological living machines. That they are as close to a living machine as we will be able to find, and that scares the absolute crap out of me.
Sorry, have you seen Nope?
Not yet. No, we're going to be watching it this weekend.
I won't say anything then. But no, I think you're completely right. And like our species have been on this planet for a blink of an eye, comparatively, haven't we? And you know, it's how much of the ocean's unexplored at this point? Like 70%.
Not even that. No, we've got more complete maps of Mars than we do of the ocean floor. So
yeah, exactly. Like we can't.
There's we can't see.
No, if James Cameron can see the Titanic, we can find that cross, you know? So, like,
exactly.
It's, yeah, I think we like you say, we observe very little of what our planet is, I think.
Yeah.
And I do think it's the ignorance of and fear of man that keeps, like, I'm watching this video over and over again because it is slightly terrifying. But this has got 1.6 million views. And then you get some person eating crab cakes with a big mic getting 3 billion views. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know. It's, and the fact that if the second something gets classified, there's truth in it. I think.
Yes.
I think if they're willing to keep it under lock and key and all that, then it shows there's some truth behind it. If it was just some nonsense, then they wouldn't give a shit about the secrecy of it.
Yeah. So there's been a number. I think there was a video actually just. The Pentagon just declassified another video. It's crap. It's just a few lights in the sky. It's very frustrating. But
drip feeding, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, disclosure is happening very slowly.
Very slowly.
Really, there's 4 videos. There's Gimbal. There's Go Fast. There's the Tic Tac, and then there's also a video from Costa Rica. We'll do an episode on as well of an object that is very strange. And I can't help but think that these things just exist here, that they're not coming from another solar system, because
it's also, I don't know, it's not just because I was lucky enough to be invited onto here, but I always felt like we don't belong here.
Yeah, very much feel the same.
I feel like we were planted here or placed here because we just kind of changed and we're not adapting, we're ruining where we are.
Yeah, we have messed stuff up big time.
In the 30,000 years that we've been
pretty much
proper thinking species.
10,000 years of civilization, and we've done a number on this planet. But
yeah, we just
one of the reasons that this subject is so interesting to me, and that the term UAP means a lot to me, is that we're not just looking at craft in the sky seen by Billy Buttmunch down in
I know Billy,
Utah.
and he's a good guy.
Yeah, like
he's a good guy.
this is this is more than just someone seeing something. This is
I think,
multiple people and systems together. Annoyingly, anything that is on radar is highly classified, so we'll never see the radar readings of this. But
no.
the rumor is that after this happened, men in black suits turned up at the Nimitz and took everything. And there is rumor that there is a much longer video out there somewhere of this object where it's caught again and it moves in ways that people can't explain. That's when you really go down the conspiracy side of things. Did men in black suits turn up? David Fravor says no. He says that never happened. But when we talk about systems and government agencies, and people could laugh at the thought of the men in black. Spoiler alert, next week's episode is going to be on the men in black. People laugh at that, but then Lou Elizondo came out and he was the head of the ATIP task force. He was.
Is this a legitimate, like, it's not just like he's like, oh, I work for this company and
no, it was legit.
Oh, okay,
100%.
Cool. Yeah.
ATIP was a thing. It was. We will do an episode on Lou Elizondo one day.
Just so we can say his name over and over again.
It's an incredible name. I would suggest on Sky there is a great series called UFO that Lou Elizondo was part of. Fantastic. It goes over a lot of what we've covered today, and it also cements the fact that these objects are more than likely coming from the ocean into our atmosphere, not the other way around. There is potentially something down there waiting, and that is terrifying. That is
that word wait.
Very War of the Worlds. If you believe Tom DeLonge, and I personally don't, because I think he's a nutter. If you believe what he says, then something big is happening soon. The US government are preparing themselves, is what he said.
He's supposed to talk about the Blink reunion, right? Like...
I would hope so. I would hope it would rather be that than the annihilation of humankind.
I don't know. The news is quite shit, to be fair.
Yeah. He really needs to stop doing UFOs and really needs to focus on the music. He's just sold
come
out.
on. Yeah, Travis Barker's doing Machine Gun Kelly. Like, come on.
No, thank you.
Anyway, sorry.
So that really is everything that I've got from this case. But I think part of this podcast is I want to hear your thoughts on this. I want you to tell me what stood out, what blows your mind, what points of this do you think that cannot be true?
When you invited me to sort of start this, I was like, yeah, but 2% of me was a bit like, is it just going to be stories of, like you said, Billy Buttwash?
Yeah,
telling his uncle he saw this thing. But what really blew my mind is the fact that, I think I've said it like a couple minutes ago, it's coming from professionals in high of their fields. And it's not what you expect an alien story to be. It's not.
No, absolutely.
I was walking in a forest and some tubby alien came up to me and touched my finger and he went home. It was like proper sci-fi, and it's beyond these people. The greatest sci-fi writers are there for a reason, and these people aren't that.
No.
These great at what they do. Not to know that they're not
storytellers.
I thank you. Yeah, they're not storytellers. These it sound like they were just displaying facts that they saw.
Yes, that's why I love this case so much. There certainly will be cases that we look on in the future where they very much are. Some dude got sucked up into a spaceship and little green men were there. Like, I want to look at those things because I'm very skeptical. I know that I'm very excited about this, and obviously I believe in the phenomena, but I'm still very skeptical. I got called a CIA informant the other day on Reddit. Nice. If you go onto the UFOs on Reddit, my post is the top post of all time, and it's a post where I debunk a guy who was trying to convince people that a telephone, like a light mast in the sky behind some fog, was a UFO. And I did a bit of investigation and just found out it was a street lamp. And I made this
defog the image.
Basically, I just found the place on Google Earth. He was telling me it was in one place. I traveled a mile down the road and found the exact location and posted it on the subreddit. Don't kick skeptics out of this community. They're very important. This guy was clearly trying to bullshit people. It got 30,000 upvotes, and it's the most upvoted post of all time on the UFO subreddit. And I'm now being called a CIA informant because I'm there trying to subterfuge and trying to hide real news and stuff.
Sorry about clicking. I'm literally on Reddit now. I want to
It's not the case. It's just, I am very skeptical about these things. I'm not someone who sees something at face value and just, I have to believe it because someone said it's real. The tagline of this podcast is open your mind and watch the skies, but that doesn't mean open your mind and believe everything.
No, God,
be skeptical. But how can I sit here? And there's a guy that we'll talk about in another episode called Mick West. He was a game designer who was part of the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater team, and he now spends his entire life telling David Fravor and Alex Dietrich that they didn't see what they saw. But
how would he like? That's
exactly
what I never got. Like,
yeah,
top
of all time, and it'll be my post. But these people that we've talked about today, they are the top of their field. These aren't just random people just trying to... There I am.
Sorry.
These aren't just random people trying to convince someone to sell a story. They're not trying to sell a book. They're not trying to make a TV show. They're not trying to have a film written after them. They are just telling people what they saw. And that's what they saw. They saw the USS Nimitz Tic Tac. And for me, it's the big one.
I think it's a great one to really start off with because it's quite a gut puncher. I'm kind of sitting here a bit terrified. Like I said, I wasn't a disbeliever at all. You know, like I said, I think it's completely ignorant to think that we are alone. But the fact that more evidence you put into the fact that they're already here, and it's quite amazingly terrifying. I think
that's a very good way of saying it, because as much as I love this field, and I really, since I was like 4 years old, my dad gave me a UFO book when I was like 4, and I read it page to page for like 10 years. Like I'm obsessed with UFOs, and I'm lucky enough to have had experiences that I can't explain. But again, I'm not a trained observer. I don't know what I'm looking for. I could have just seen a helicopter. I could have just seen a plane or a drone. I don't know.
No.
David Fravor, he has never said that it's come from outer space, ever. He's never said that it's aliens or little green men. He's very, very careful not to say that. He doesn't want to be associated with the UFO crowd. He just says that this is something he can't explain, and it doesn't appear to be man-made. And that is where we will leave this episode. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
I had a blast. What about you, James? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I'm covering urine, but yeah, I had a great time. Don't know what you're doing, man.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, if you go to our link tree, it's linktr.ee/paranormalitypodcast. You can ask us a question. So if there's a case that you would like to see, if there's a particular subject matter that you'd like us to discuss, maybe you'd like us to go on Reddit and debunk a few things again, just let us know. Follow us on Twitter. We are PodNormality on Twitter. Search us on Facebook. We are Paranormality Podcast. And tell a friend about this show, because this is a real passion project for me, and I'm really excited to get into some freaky stuff.
Oh, me too, man. Can't wait.
Very excited. So from me, Harry, thank you so much. James, it's been a pleasure to have you on as well.
As always, my friend, as always.
Open your mind and watch the skies, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.